The content discussed in this video includes sexual harassment, sexual violence, and rape. These topics are sensitive and can evoke strong emotional responses. Please view with care and self-compassion. Topics for this video include characteristics of environments that are inclusive and supportive of all genders and sexes, characteristics of environments that are permissive of harassment on the basis of sex and gender, examples and non-examples of safe and inclusive environments, advocating for safer environments in your community college setting, identifying and responding to red flags in your environment, and upstander and bystander actions. An educational setting that actively seeks to prevent sexual harassment is one that values diverse contributions and works to be inclusive for all people and identities. Inclusive learning environments are designed to reflect the values and interests and histories of all its members in the curriculum and in the ways of being and learning. These environments are actively working to engage people from all backgrounds, races, ethnicities, and genders. This includes proactively noticing and addressing patterns of disengagement in partnership with those who are marginalized. These environments are intentionally thinking and talking about inclusion and engaging in ongoing reflection to ensure that the practices and outcomes of the school are aligned with its values. And they are supportive to all individuals and groups in the ways that center their perspectives and needs and help them achieve their goals. A truly inclusive learning environment relies upon the collective action of all its members and understands that each person's actions have the power to influence the overall culture. In an inclusive learning environment, each person is responsible for recognizing the systems of power that might be in play and disrupting those that maintain unjust and inequitable participation. This includes noticing gender and sex-based patterns in the classroom, such as who participates in classroom discussions and who does not, whose ideas are valued and whose are dismissed. How is gender-based language used to invite or disclude? How do people present their thinking to the group, and how does this vary by gender? How are these patterns impacted by intersectional identities such as race and gender? It also includes noticing how patterns like these extend beyond the classroom and into social settings, such as who is included and excluded from social gatherings, who directs the social gatherings and who's at the center of attention, who initiates romantic or sexual encounters and how are these initiated, what kinds of non-consent are considered acceptable, when it is hard to deny consent, or when a person's non-consent meet with any kind of attack. How are substances used in social settings? Are substances used in ways that enhance or take away a person's power or agency? It can be easy to take some of these patterns for granted and say, that's just how things are, or it's not that big of a deal. But these patterns permit sexual harassment and sexual assault by systematically ensuring that the power is not shared amongst everyone in the room. How do you know if your environment is inclusive? Some things you might see in an inclusive environment are a diverse range of identities in classrooms and social settings, active participation by all members. No one dominates the conversation, and all people feel safe and welcome to share their perspectives. Spaces that adjust to welcome and accommodate their diverse members. People demonstrating respect for others' voices, whether they are sharing an academic opinion or non-consent to a social or sexual invitation. A wide range of ideas are shared, and when conflict arises, people respectfully consider each other's perspectives. When people share their experiences, they are trusted and believed. On the other hand, you will know that an environment is not as inclusive as it could be if one group of people, particularly a group defined by race or gender, for example, dominates the conversation. If the classroom or social setting is overwhelmingly one race or gender. Those in the majority are dismissive or argumentative about feedback they receive. Those in the majority demonstrate that they are more concerned with keeping things in the way that benefit them than welcoming others in. People disrupt, speak over, ignore, or dismiss others' ideas. Individuals or groups of people demonstrate fear of expressing their opinions or setting boundaries. When people share their experiences, they are questioned or diminished. Inclusive environments are not free from conflict, nor are they perfect all the time. However, inclusive environments make it safe for people to be themselves and to do what is healthy and right for themselves without fear of retaliation. The opposite of an inclusive environment is a toxic environment. A toxic environment is one where there is an imbalance of power. Some people consistently hold all the power, and others have to accommodate their perspectives, needs, and experiences. In a toxic environment, there's unjust outcomes. Some people consistently achieve, feel safe, and feel valued, while other people consistently struggle, worry about their safety, and do not feel respected. Manipulation and gaslighting. People are blamed for the challenges they face, and power is used to maintain power rather than to extend it. And isolation. Instead of feeling a sense of belonging and community, people feel disconnected and alienated. The intersection of a toxic environment and sexual harassment is often referred to as rape culture. Vox defines rape culture as a culture in which sexual violence is treated as the norm, and victims are blamed for their own assaults. It is not just about sexual violence itself, but about the cultural norms and institutions that protect rapists and promote impunity, shame victims, and demand that women make unreasonable sacrifices to avoid sexual assault. In a rape culture, you might see things like a pimps and hoes party, people saying that she's asking for it based on what someone is wearing, frequent public conversations about a person's body or sexual habits, girls or women making elaborate plans to ensure safety when going out at night, calling women who freely engage in sex sluts, a historically shameful term, but calling men who engage in the same behavior players, a term that is celebrated. Blaming a rape victim, saying that this wouldn't have happened if she didn't have too much to drink. All of these are examples of the kinds of behaviors that are normalized, making it seem normal for women to be treated as sexual objects. These things and others create the foundation for sexual harassment and sexual assault. While this harms women in obvious ways, rape culture is harmful to people of all genders. In the same way that rape culture treats women as sexual objects, men are expected to be obsessed with sex. While the harassment and assault of women is normalized, the harassment and assault of men is ignored, since men always want sex. And those who are transgender, non-binary, asexual, or otherwise non-conforming to woman and man are left out of the conversation entirely, despite the fact that they are those most likely to be victims of sexual violence. Not everyone who exists in a rape culture will be raped, nor will they be a rapist. Everyone living inside a rape culture will be affected by its norms and expectations. Rape cultures are dehumanizing to all its members by replacing a person's individual wants, needs, feelings, and experiences with generalizations that place sex, no matter the cost, on a pedestal, rather than the people having or not having it. What we call rape culture today has its roots in gender discrimination, codified by federal and state laws. Some examples include when Europeans first began settling in the colonies, they actively used sexual violence to assert control over indigenous peoples. The first laws prohibiting rape in the United States only protected white women who were not married to the perpetrator. Marital rape, a rape of a person's spouse, did not become a crime in all 50 states until 1993. Rape continues to be the most underreported crime, with an estimate of 60% of rapes not reported. Victims often do not report because they can expect to be questioned, blamed, and shamed for what was done to them, both in private settings and during legal proceedings. It remains extremely difficult to prosecute rapists. When a rape is reported, there's only about a 50% chance of arrest. Factoring in how many rapes go unreported, only about 6% of rapists serve time in jail. The attitudes and beliefs about sex and sexual violence reflected in these laws are also evident in popular culture, where we frequently see romanticized versions of sexual harassment and even sexual assault. Songs like Robin Thicke's Blurred Lines and the normalization or glorification of rape and sexual violence in shows like Game of Thrones and movies like 50 Shades of Grey pass down this culture so frequently and effectively that it becomes all too easy to accept these patterns in our lives as normal and all too difficult to stand up against them. One of the most profound things that anyone can do to prevent sexual harassment is to actively contribute to creating a community that is hostile to all harassment. According to the National Sexual Violence Resource Center, sexual violence prevention means addressing the root causes of sexual violence, like broad cultural factors such as beliefs about gender equality and multiple forms of oppression, such as racism, transphobia, and ableism, and social systems that reinforce power over others. Community-level prevention requires a constellation of actions, including formal policies and rules, and formal expectations and norms. Some examples of more formal actions that can be taken at the community level to prevent sexual violence are: examine the policies and rules in place, the outcomes they support. What are an organization's policies in regards to gender equality, harassment, and assault? How do these policies work to prevent or permit sexual violence? How are members of a community educated about these issues? Is meaningful learning about these policies a priority? How is it supported and facilitated? What kinds of resources is an organization investing in for preventing sexual violence and supporting those who have been impacted by it? How do these resources compare to the organization's other investments? Addressing any inconsistencies, gaps, or problems within these areas can create structural changes that make shifts to an individual behavior possible. Informal actions might include making community agreements within classrooms and other organized spaces, such as clubs, using inclusive language, recognizing and raising awareness about sexist ideas like victim blaming, interrupting those who use exclusionary, harassing, or hateful language, calling out patterns that contribute to gender inequality, and refusing to participate in events that are exclusionary or hostile towards any person or group. Steps like these can make daily progress towards addressing the root causes of sexual violence and healing the cultural elements that allow for sexual violence to exist. In addition to the steps all can take to advocate for their communities, individuals who witness acts of sexual harassment or sexual abuse, or the events leading up to it, have the opportunity to intervene as a bystander. Bystanders are those who are present when an incident takes place. Bystanders can also play an important role in communicating to all those who are present that a behavior is okay or not okay. When a bystander acts to interrupt sexual harassment, it draws more attention to the behavior and empowers its victim. When a bystander ignores a behavior, it sends the message that the behavior is okay or not that big a deal, and it makes it more likely that the behavior will continue or progress. Bystanders might find themselves with the opportunity to intervene in situations like overhearing two students talk about a third student's body in a degrading or sexual manner, witnessing someone touch someone who appears trapped or uncomfortable, receiving an unwanted picture or video of a third party engaging in a sexual act, observing as someone flirts aggressively with someone who is obviously intoxicated. In these situations, bystanders often hesitate to step in because they believe that these are personal issues, or that they don't want to make it awkward, or they fear retaliation. Sometimes bystanders just don't know what to do or how to intervene. Though these are legitimate concerns, the actions of a bystander can make a big difference for someone who is being harmed or at risk of being harmed. Bystanders can employ a variety of strategies, some of them more subtle than others, but all of them designed to interrupt harassing behavior. These strategies include engaging directly with those doing the harassment. For example, a bystander overhears an inappropriate conversation or sexual jokes, or receives a DM with sexually harassing content. This might simply look like saying, "That's not cool," to draw attention to the fact that the behavior isn't wanted or consented by all involved, or "That's not going to happen," when addressing someone who is persisting in trying to engage in unwanted sexual contact. Creating a distraction so that the victim has the opportunity to safely exit the situation. This might look like changing the conversation, or asking the victim for help with something, or starting an activity that draws others in. Addressing the victim directly, such as saying, "Do you need help? Do you want me to stay with you? Or do you want to go to another place with me?" Rallying others to support you in acting. This might look like asking someone to come with you or notifying the victim's friend of what you have observed. Offering support to the victim after witnessing sexual harassment. Even if a bystander does not intervene in the moment, they can still express their concern and help connect victims to information and support. If there is an imminent threat of physical harm, the best technique may be to call 911 or to seek support from campus security. More resources and strategies can be found through organizations like RAIN and the National Sexual Violence Resource Center. If we want the places we live, work, and learn to be places that are safe and welcoming to all people, it is each individual's responsibility to work towards creating that environment. The actions of a responsible and responsive bystander can go a long way to making this goal a reality.